Hi, in this video I'm going to show you how to create a mobile website or mobile friendly website using a fluid grid layout and Dreamweaver CS6 on a PC. There are some minor differences between seeing this on a PC versus Mac, and there's also some other differences with seeing this on CS6 versus Creative Cloud, the new version. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go up to File and I'm going to click on New Fluid Grid Layout, and I'm going to make sure HTML5 is my doc type, and I'm going to hit Create. It prompts me to save a style sheet, so I created a folder called Mobile Site, a folder called Scripts, and a folder called Styles. I'm going to just save my master style because it basically wants you to have two different ones. You have a master right here and then a boilerplate, and then you have this JavaScript file. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to save this as index.html. You could save it whatever makes sense for your given project. And then it says, where do you want to put these other files? And so this is when I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to put them in my styles folder. I'm going to hit copy. But then what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring this up and I'm going to move my JavaScript file into my scripts folder. And it's asked me if I want to update it, and I do. Then I'm going to come up here and I'm going to save all. So then I'm going to go to split view. And I can see that when I've done this, what it's basically done is it's created a div that I'm just going to for now call it header, right? And it's put it within a div called grid container, right? And so that's my basic container. And then what it does in the master is it has three different parts, right? So it starts with the mobile layout, and it has one for grid container and one for layout div, and then the media screen, right? So for basically for tablets, and if you read the comments, they'll tell you, and then desktop. So what I do is I know right away that I want to actually have my IDs make more sense for me. So I'm going to call this header, and then what I'm going to do is I have to then go through this and in three places rename this header. Now when you're working in here, you always want to make sure you don't delete these little red curly braces because they basically make everything. They're almost like giant parentheses that allow this whole little unit of CSS to work. Alright, so now I'm going to go back here. And so now I'm going to make some space. And I'm going to basically do a two-column layout where I'm going to have a section and then a call out and then a footer under that. And so there are multiple ways you can do this. The first way, I'm going to use my insert panel. So make sure you have window insert selected. But over here, I'm going to make some room. I have this thing called insert fluid grid layout. If you don't see it, make sure you have layout selected. And I'm going to make sure my cursor is under my header. And I'm going to click that, and I'm going to call this section. Now here it says start a new row. And I do want to start a new row. And usually I just default to that anyways. But I'm going to delete this text, and then I'm going to give some more space. And I'm going to do the same thing for my call out. So in this case, I'm not going to start a new row. And then I'm going to clean up my text a little. And then under that, I'm going to give some space. And this is one other way, besides hand coding, so I can go down to Insert, Layout Objects, and Fluid Grid Layout. And then I'm going to call this Footer. And I do want this to be on a different row, and clean up my text just a little. Alright, and so I can see a few things going on here. And so what I want to do is I'm going to go over to master now, and with my CSS, and I'm going to start at the top and work my way down, is I'm going to change my section to 70%, and it's going to float left, and then my callout's floating right. And then my callout is floating left as well. And I'm going to change that to float right. And I'm going to change its width to 25%. And so this is going to be the same working my way down. So once again, I want it to float left, and I want it to be 70%. And I want the call out to float right and be 20%. And I could adjust this margin left, this little margin as well as needed. But for now, this is working for me. So once again, I want it to float right and be 70%. And then this, so I want that, to float left 70%. And I want my call out to float right. And I want it to be 20%. Or did I do 25? I think I might have done 25. So let's just go up and check. It's always good. So I did 20 there, we'll do 25. Alright, there we go. So you notice how it pops back over here, and that looks good. But what I want to do is I'd like to preview this regularly. Now I can do that down here by looking at what it would look like with a desktop, a tablet, or a mobile device. But what I like to do often is just see what it will look like in a web browser. And it's hard without a background to see, but I can see I have a header, a section, and a call out, and I can see that it gets closer and closer. But what I want actually is when it goes to my mobile device, I want it to actually pop under and not be in a two-column layout at that point. So I'm going to actually go back to this, and I'm going to change that to left. I want to make sure I'm in the mobile. I am. And then I'm just going to change this to 100%, and I'm going to change this back to 100. Right? So then what it does, let's save all. Let's go to complete here. So now what you'll notice is I'm in my desktop, but when I go here, that's my tablet, and then here it pops it down, right? So it still isn't quite what I want, so I can deal with working on cleaning that up as we go, but you at least see where this is going. Alright, so now what I can do here, let's make sure I'm under here. I believe if I just clear both with the call out, it should work the way I want for this. We still got a space here, so we'll figure that out. But for now, I'm going to leave that as is. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to save all. And I'm going to now go through and I'm going to just add a little bit of style to help my page take shape. So the first thing I do is at the very top, and this is something I want to be consistent with all of my sites, is I want to add a body and I want to add a background color. And I'm just going to change that to a light gray. So then I want to go down to actually these others, and this is where I want to add some other background colors, as well as I want to add some padding. I'll start with this. I'm going to start with 10 pixels padding, and then my section, background color, I'm going to make that white, and that's actually going to be something that I'm going to do throughout these. So I'm going to add that for my call out, and I'm going to go down here to my section, call out, and so I'm adding this on both of them. And that's the hardest thing to remember, is you essentially have three places you need to update. And there are all kinds of little tricks you can do to make certain things go faster and use less code, but when you're beginning, I think it's just really good to kind of get in that habit of, okay, I have a blue header, I have my call out, and I have my footer, and that looks good. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add some more padding to my section. Right, so I'm going to add some left to right top. Okay, so let's start back up at the top. And so what we'll do is, coming down, we're going to add 10 pixels for each of these, and then we'll see where we need to tweak it more. If you remember here, we had this question of padding. And so what we're going to do for now is just, not padding, margin, I'm sorry. So we're going to change that margin right. So margin left 0, margin right. That looks good. We're going to go down here. We're going to do the same thing down here. We're going to add that 10 pixels. And I actually forgot to do it here. And that's the easiest thing to do, is being consistent throughout. And if this is something I knew I was just going to do throughout, and I wasn't going to change it with each of my views, I could put it at the very top, and then it would just cascade down and it would apply to all of these. So let's take a look. Okay, so we definitely have some issues here with a little bit of space, but overall we're looking pretty good, and then we can start to see what it looks like. Right, so it looks good there. Tablet gets a little off. Right, and so now we definitely are noticing that it's not floating to the right every time. It looks like that margin right's not always right on. So let's just make sure we're always clear here. And if you remember that the mobile one looked pretty good, so it was actually more that tablet one that it starts to look funky. So this is where padding, I might decide I want my top padding, and I could break it out if I wanted to. Padding top, 10 pixels. Padding right, 10 pixels. Padding bottom, 10 pixels. And maybe I don't want any padding. I'm sorry, let's make this padding left. Maybe right now, because I'm not sure the way those two are butting against each other, that I want that for each one of these. So here I'm going to... So basically what I'm doing is I'm just working through this white space between these. Right? So it's that I was worrying about, which was pushing it down. So I'm just going down here to each of these. And I want my section to be left. And I want to go to this and change it to right. Hopefully you're following me and this is making sense. And that's the thing with so much of this is this gets into kind of advanced stuff for beginners at least. So let's preview this. Okay, so we still in the web desktop view, still gets a little funky down here. Alright, tablet gets a little funky, so we might change that width a little. Okay, so let's go back here. And so the first one we know, so we'll start at the bottom and work our way up. Right? So we could start with making that 22%. Let's save all and take a look. And you don't have to preview this in the browser. I just find it often helps me. Right? And so then, what I could always do too, if I'm, worrying about some of this in between, right? So something I could do is I could, from the grid container, or I could do it from the body, but from here, this top grid container, I could do background color of white. So what it would do is it would fill that in. So, and honestly, I don't have this problem on the mobile one. It's more the others, but regardless, let's take a look and see what that does. Okay, so you notice how we definitely have a little bit of padding issues to work it out, but overall, it's looking pretty good. And actually, that looks more like we have some margin issues with the header. Alright, so let's just go through here. And let's try getting rid of our margins altogether. And let's see what that does. I'll work my way back up, looking for margin, delete. And right now I'm just seeing how this works. So margin auto, I'm fine with the grid container. I'm playing with more this idea of let's get rid of these others and see how it looks. And until you do this a lot, and I still haven't done this a lot to really feel super comfortable with it, it's a lot of trial and error. Especially when you're new and you're still trying to figure this out. This is advanced stuff, but the future web development definitely is how do you make sites that are kind of device agnostic. They don't care what device you're on. So this is where you want to go. Alright, so now let's save all, preview once more. Okay, so still didn't quite do the problem, but start to see how good that looks. Definitely have some issues down here with the footer. The footer definitely is missing padding, and so you could just add a 10 pixel and it probably would work all the way around. So let's do that real quick. Okay. And so this is where if I know I want like my body font for my whole page to be Arial, this is where I would do it above. So I do my font family, and I'm going to do, I'll just do this. And then font size, I'll set my basic one at 15. Actually, I could set it as 100% and then adjust it as needed. Okay, so we can start seeing that take shape. So I'm going to go in my, right next to this, I'm going to add a H1 because I want my H1 to always be Verdanda. You can see I misspelled that. Gotta be careful where your cursor is. This is where I want to go into my HTML. I want to make sure I have that. And save all. I'm going to do a couple more things here while I have my H1. So like I said, I can go over here and I can change my view and I can start to see how it's taking shape. Right? So for the most part, so you can see my footer, if I jump over there, especially in my mobile. So let's go to Master CSS and look at my footer in the mobile. And so it's floating left, right? So display block, and it's got that 10 pixels on both sides, which is not what I did on the others. So if you remember, if I work my way down, I started doing this, right? And so that could be something I could worry about if, but in this case, because everything's floated left, it doesn't really matter. In this case, honestly, my footer, if anything, I want my font size to be 0.8 em, let's say. So let's go down to footer, do it for each one. Let's make our way up to the top. So just like that, you can see that. Now, let's take a look at one other thing. And this is one of those things, as you get going, it's very easy to start adjusting completely, right? And so here, that's what's throwing me off. So I'm going to change this padding on my grid container to 0 pixels. Alright, so padding, once again, 0 pixels, because I'm adding my padding within my sections, so I don't need it there. Okay, so let's save all and take a look. Okay, so definitely have a couple things going off over here between a difference between the section and the footer, right? So that's would be something to tweak. But beyond that, I mean, we're pretty close from having this where we want it to kind of build out our site. So you take a look at the header, and the header basically, we could just see what happens when we add 10 pixels. We have it there. Let's see if we have it there. We do. I want to make sure I have a title. There's a lot of other things to be done, but you start to at least see this take shape. You start to see this, that what it looks like from the tablet view and what it looks like when all of a sudden when it moves to that view, right? Because the mobile device view, you want everything to look smaller. So there are a lot of things that you could do to kind of adjust this. This is something where, font size, I could adjust the size. I could do a lot of things here, but hopefully this gives you a basic idea of how to do the basics with creating a fluid grid layout website in Dreamweaver CS6 on a PC. Thanks.